That was the art style too, and I at this point right now today, I don't regret it. You know what I mean? I could see where I don't know. I don't think that I will regret it. I don't blame any wrestling promotions. Like I say in the movie, everything was up to me. And that was me doing everything, you know, that I ever did. So, and I never told anybody. I never told anybody when I was hurt. So I couldn't say they made me work, you know, when they knew that I was hurt or whatever. Because for me, hurt meant something different, and it still does than normal people. I deal with pain every day, and I think I always have. Like, sometimes people ask me how I feel. I'm 48. How's my body feel? And I'm like, well, I'm sore, but I honestly don't remember not being sore. Like in my 20s, my back hurt. I don't remember. I'm sure it's added up and not going away as much anymore. But I think that I was always dealing with pain. But for me, the word hurt meant you can't work. I think Sabu taught me that when he broke me into the business way back in '89, and he said, if you're hurt, you can't work, so don't be hurt. So, you know, that means, hey, if I'm limping and I can hide it, and if my neck, you know, if I can barely turn my head because my neck hurts so bad, but I can hide it and go out there and have a match, to me, I wasn't hurt, so there was no reason to tell anybody. Now, by the way, you know, now we know about the concussion studies. We know it can lead to long-term damage, and so there are changes. You know, WWE doesn't use chair shots to the head. Even when I first got into WWE way back in 2001, Vince was telling me to put my hands up, and I was being stubborn. I could never blame that on him. It would be totally dishonest. But now I say I don't regret it because, you know, I had a great career and I'm still wrestling, you know, and I still have value. The more I talk about retiring, the more my value seems to go up. And that's the reason I'm still putting the boots on. And I'm with Impact Wrestling now. And they respect me doing whatever I want to as an artist. Sometimes those guys hit each other. Still, I see that, you know, it's like they're controlling it to an extent, you know, but there are changes made, you know, like I used to have a concussion like every single night when I was with ECW. Now I'm not wrestling nearly as often, but I think in the last 2 or 3 years I've probably gotten 2 or 3 concussions, and they both been like little things that rattle my brain where I'm like, oh no, did I just do it again? And then a few seconds later it shakes off and I'm like, whew, okay, good. It's just a normal one. By the way, something else that I learned in the movie, I've always heard from people, well, the more concussions you get, the more susceptible you are to get more. And I've never found that true myself. I've always thought that there was a good chance that wasn't true and that was just a myth. My doctor, Dr. Williams at Curl and Jove in Los Angeles, seems to agree with me. So that's something that I learned too. When he cleared me to wrestle, I still had the double vision, but he knew I could wrestle because I'd already done it a couple of times before he cleared me. And so he said, yeah, I think you can wrestle. Your symptoms are still getting better. And he said, if you get a concussion on your next match, it's on its own. It's not related to this last concussion you had. It's on its own. So that told me that my instincts were right and that you're not more susceptible the more that you get. I've always felt like each time I get a concussion, it was on its own. So I don't know if we can call that fact, but you know, it's what I was told and what I believe. So that's something else that I learned besides wrestling.
That's definitely an interesting tidbit. And another thing that you mentioned about Sabu, and I just wanted to bring it up because it is interesting how far back your friendship, and obviously you training under the Sheik and him being the Sheik's nephew and him kind of training you along. It is interesting to see you guys through the years go from basically '89 all the way, you know, obviously you feud and you team in ECW, you win the tag title, you guys have an epic feud, but then all the way even to today, you're still teaming with him at Impact Wrestling. It's an interesting relationship all these years.
It really is, 30 years, and he's the only guy in the business that's like my real brother to me. You know, we're not blood, but, you know, he's known me since I was right out of high school, and because of that, he and I, besides the fact we also get along really good, but he and I have literally had each other's backs in the ring, in bars, on the street, all around the world, like over the last 30 years. So it's really, really cool to have somebody like that.
Yeah, that is awesome, and I love that you guys are still teaming even today, you know, against the Lucha Brothers, against the North. in Impact Wrestling. I just think that's awesome that you guys went through that crazy style of ECW, but can still wrestle, can still work, and still put on an amazing show. I just love that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Sabu's always impressing me. Like, he's still out there doing all the crazy stuff, chair, top rope, moonsaults, dive into the crowd, going through a table, and he's always impressing me. I mean, I've always kept up in shape, pretty good. I always keep my stretch routine, and I think everybody knows that I'm able to still do all the moves that I've ever done. I just don't want to as much anymore.
Right.
With Sabu, he's still surprising me, because I've been around him when he was hurt and he got hip surgery a few years ago, and I helped him so much. And now he's wrestling like way better than he did a few years ago, and I'm always amazed at him.
It is crazy, to see just the bumps and the beating you guys take throughout the years, but able to come back, and still be wrestling into your 40s, and still be athletic and still be doing what you're doing. It is, absolutely amazing. Thinking back to ECW though, and all those feuds and all those great matches, does some stick out more than others in ECW? Because obviously, Sabu, and I always remember you beating Bam Bam Bigelow. That, for whatever reason, that really stuck out to me. I'm a Jersey guy. Bam Bam Bigelow. I literally live in the same town, Asbury Park, so it always stuck out to me. Like, wow, RVD beat Bam Bam Bigelow. I feel like that kind of puts you on the map, even further there. Is there, some ECW feuds that really stick out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone talks about the Jerry Lynn RVD matches.
Oh yeah, of course. Yep.
Those will go down in history as standard changers, and that's even a term behind the curtain now. Like in the dressing room, when wrestlers start out doing some really impressive chain wrestling on the competitive level, they'll call it like RVD Jerry Lynn stuff. So they'll say, we want to start out doing like some RVD Jerry Lynn kind of stuff, and it's like, and it's we had a chemistry that you can't just duplicate. It was just organic. Like we weren't even that good of friends when we started wrestling. We just both brought out that competition in ourselves and each other, and so we had great matches. The Bam Bam Bigelow match, of course, that was just like you said, that made me a superstar. That elevated me so much. I think it was 1998, and I really didn't understand. Like, it was the next night after wrestling Bam Bam. We were in Queens, New York, and I was talking to Paul, because I was always trying to come up with new moves I'd never seen before, and I was telling Paul in the daytime about some crazy move I had in mind. Like, hey, I was wrestling Mikey Whipwreck. I said, hey, I want to crotch him on this guardrail on the entranceway, but then springboard from the other guardrail on the other side and go all the way across the walkway and kick him off, and have Fonzie hold the chair on his face. What do you think? And Paul was like, I think it doesn't matter what you do tonight. These people are going to love you. I didn't know what he meant. I was like, oh, that's weird, whatever. But he was right. Like, after that, I was a superstar on a different level, and I never went back.
So true, and they absolutely loved you. Where do you come up with some of these moves? Because obviously they're innovative, they're unique, you've never seen them before. A little sprinkle of, some karate and some kickboxing obviously involved too. Like, how do you come up with some of these moves?
I think outside the box, and I think that's really the only way that I can explain it. It's true pretty much with every aspect of my life. I happen to be known for wrestling, but I've always thought differently than everybody else. I've always studied people in a way that makes me feel like I'm not one of them. And especially as an adult. But when I was wanting to be a wrestler, when I was in school, high school still, and I knew I was going to attend professional wrestling school afterwards, like my senior year, that's all I was doing was like making up moves that I hadn't seen before. That's what caught my attention, by the way, as a fan. There was some wrestlers that, like, nobody else was watching Leapin' Lanny Poffo. He would lose every match. Everyone else was watching the guy that he was wrestling, but I would see him doing flying head scissors and some cartwheels when nobody else was doing it. And it made me think so far outside the box, made me think like, wow, wrestling can be cool and exciting and creative. And so, like, before I ever had my very first match, I was already practicing in the ring. I was like, I wonder if I can jump up and do a split and land in the corner on the top rope, bounce off my thighs, and I didn't know it was called a moonsault, but, backflip onto my opponent. I was doing a split leg moonsault, working on that before I ever had my first match. That's always been my approach to business and to life, pretty much.